Hello there and welcome to the second devlog for Action at Sea. Recently we did several game tests to find out what were the best settings for the ship controls and ship movement, and also what were the best settings for camera position and camera controls. So in order to test this, we made 5 builds of the game, each with different settings relating to the ship's movement speed, the ship's turning speed, and also camera position in terms of how zoomed in or how far out it was from the player. And we made these builds and then gave them to a bunch of testers to get their feedback on which build was the best to play. So in this video I'll be taking you through these 5 builds and showing you all the different things that we tried out. So this first build was an attempt at seeing if a more realistic movement speed for the ship would be conducive to gameplay. We wanted to try this out because during previous testing sessions we received comments saying that the ship moved too quickly and it felt like more of a speedboat than an actual ship or frigate. But based on the testing, we found that the slow moving ship felt slow. So ultimately what we found in testing was that the playtesters agreed with us and said that if we wanted to go for an arcadey, fast-paced sort of hectic direction, then having a faster ship would be better than a slower ship. So ultimately this was not the build that we went with. This second build is actually what we initially had before we started our focus testing on player movement and camera position. So as you can see, the ship is moving much faster than the first build, and it really suits a more fast-paced, arcadey, sort of hectic, crazy sort of party game feel. So testing showed that this movement speed suited the game the most if we intended to go for that sort of an arcadey feel, and ultimately this is the movement scheme that we went with in the end. This third build was again an attempt to get more realistic ship movement in response to some comments from testers. So what we changed in this build was the actual turning point of the ship. So before, in previous builds, the turning point was the center of the ship. So we would rotate based on the center of the ship. With this one, we've moved the rotation point more towards the back. So I guess it seems more like an actual ship, because a real ship wouldn't actually rotate in the center. They have a rudder that could change directions and so on. So the turning point would be actually at the back of the ship. Ultimately, we found that this didn't have much of an effect on gameplay. So honestly, if it doesn't affect gameplay, then why bother with it at all? So ultimately we didn't use it in the end, and we simply stuck with the center pivot point. This is the fourth build, and in this build, instead of testing out ship movement, we tested out camera position. So for this build, we tried out an auto camera zoom system. So basically, when the player was moving slowly, the camera would be zoomed in, and when the player was moving fast, the camera would zoom out to show more of the surrounding area. The idea behind this was that when you're moving slowly, you'll be engaging in ship-to-ship combat with enemies, and when you're moving fast, you're exploring. So that's why we had moving slower ship, more zoomed in, less to see, so you can focus on fighting an enemy, and more zoomed out means you're exploring, moving faster, trying to capture islands, and so on. Some players noted that the visual effect of the zooming in and out was cool, although some people found it jarring as well. Ultimately, we scrapped this as well because we found that it didn't add anything to gameplay. So this is the fifth build, and again we focused on camera zoom level. And instead of auto camera zoom, we gave players direct control over the zoom level of their camera through the use of the mouse scroll wheel. So what we found with this build was that most people actually stayed at the maximum zoom level for most of their time in the game. So essentially, it made having a manual zoom fixer redundant. So eventually we just scrapped it. We also asked players what zoom level would be the best default for the game, and they said that the default zoom level was the best. So ultimately we went with the default zoom level and just scrapped manual zoom altogether. So that fifth build was the last build that we sent out to playtesters to test, and the following builds that we're about to show you were tested internally. This 6th build is once again trying to see if we can realistically model ship movement. However, it is somewhat different to the previous builds that we had testing out realistic ship movement. So when thinking about how a ship realistically moves, we found that you can actually get a rough approximation of the movement that a ship has in the water through using wheels. So in this build we have it so that the ship can only move forward, and so turning the wheels determines which direction the boat will head to. So this is very much similar to how a rudder would direct water beneath a ship. The reason why this was only tested internally was because we found it very difficult to tweak the controls, and we're really unable to make the controls maneuverable and actually easy to use. So that's why we didn't end up going with this build. This is the 7th build, and in this build we added a simple speed boost ability for the ship. So after the ship has been moving at a maximum speed for a short length of time, the ship receives a small speed boost, with turning also being reduced, the camera zooming out slightly for effect, and this was supposed to resemble the wind catching the sails after the sails have been unfurled. So this feature is actually still within the current development build. That was an overview of some of the focus testing that we've done for Action at Sea. Even though before we started this, we already had a general idea of what was and wasn't going to work, the results from testing confirmed it. So at first glance, doing the testing may have seemed like a waste of time, but if we hadn't done the testing, we would have no way of knowing whether we were on the right track or not. So in the end, it was worth it. Also, I'd like to thank you guys for checking out this update, and hopefully there'll be another video coming out in the not too distant future. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.